I'm Rebecca Woods, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the Society of Fellows here at Columbia, and I received my PhD from MIT. I work on the environmental history of the British Empire in the 19th century, and I look particularly at the ways in which British types of livestock played an important role both in the kind of unfolding ecological consequences of colonial expansion and in the more cultural elements of the imperial experience. So the sort of you are what you eat, British people wanted to eat British meat. The ability to kind of replicate this in New Zealand was foundational both to this economy and to the notion that that colonial rule, or a way to sort of legitimize colonial rule, because even if Britons couldn't be native to New Zealand, at least their sheep could be. I became interested in studying animals in a historical context. I came across a lot of material from the early modern period and these sort of home health guides that were designed to help you treat both your livestock and your family members and yourself. And that got me thinking about the ways in which non-human animals are incorporated into human history and kind of what that can tell us about society in the past and culture in the past and the way we sort of construct worlds for ourselves relative to non-human nature. I also grew up in Vermont. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up surrounded by farmland and livestock. Added to that, my family is Canadian, so I have this sort of long history of the colonial experience in some way in my past, and I think those two things always were fascinating to me. I'm teaching contemporary civilization in the core curriculum this semester at Columbia. This is one of the foundational courses for Columbia undergrads, and it's essentially an introduction to the history of philosophy. The students read foundational texts beginning with Plato's Republic and going all the way by the spring to the sort of end of the 19th century, Virginia Woolf. And the idea behind this class is both to introduce students to sort of universal or quasi-universal elements of Western culture, notions of virtue and justice, the relationship of the individual to the collective, how cosmology has been understood over time, but also to begin them thinking about the ways in which narratives are constructed about the past and a sort of to begin to critique the idea of a progressive history. I read mostly the documents and records of relatively elite men in the 19th century. In teaching the core, I'm really immersing myself in the same kind of educational context that my sources took for granted. And it's really, I think, opening up new avenues of inquiry for me. Columbia is a wonderful place for me to be doing research, particularly as someone who works in the 19th century. I'm revising my dissertation into a book manuscript, and I'm also beginning work on a new project while I'm here at the Society, and this is a history of cold, of the ways in which cold itself as a sort of basic element of human existence in the natural world is increasingly incorporated into all kinds of aspects of life in the 19th century. Ice and cold and the production of artificial cold are increasingly commoditized, and the cold begins to circulate as something that is an object of exchange, really, in an economic and a cultural sense. One of the great things about being in the Society of Fellows here is the colleagues. Being down the hall from Teresa Bejan, who works on political theory in the early modern period, is unlocking mysteries about the ways in which people signed documents, for instance, in the 18th century, the kind of classical allusions in a lot of the agricultural sources I research, and it's a very stimulating environment. The interdisciplinarity of it, I think, is very productive. The lunchtime lecture series, which is a kind of mainstay of the Society, is an opportunity for us to share our work with each other, both with the other fellows, and to sort of open up an ongoing dialogue about our own particular research interests and the ways they intersect. And it's also a way to engage with members of the board and the wider Columbia community. The intellectual atmosphere at Columbia is very rigorous, and so the question and answer period is always challenging and exciting, and an opportunity really to kind of hone your argument, and as well as to open up new paths of inquiry.